Drago,
What's up, baby?
what's going on?
Man, just living the dream. Just trying to get on your level with them suits, man. Let's go.
I
Looking pretty
know.
again.
I've been on the suit game a little too much lately.
Wow. Suit up and show up, right? Trying to get on your level with them suits, man.
We get some bad reverb there. Show everyone your Cactus Jack shirt.
Oh,
I like it. I like it a lot.
that's an OG Cactus Jack. Bang bang.
I saw a picture with him and who's the guy from King and Queens? Kevin James.
Evan James.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were like best friends and wrestled together in
Yeah, yeah,
high
yeah,
school.
yeah,
You seen
yeah.
that
Yeah, and
picture?
they were like actually pretty good athletes back in the day.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Kevin James is all ripped. I was like, neither of them look like that anymore.
Yeah, yeah. They were like Division 1 wrestlers, which is wild, right?
That's crazy. They went to the same high school. So we are episode 39. Who do you got for 39?
39, that's a great question. I have no idea. We need to find out. Give me 1 second.
We got any Timberwolves that are number 39? My boy Brody's a big T-Wolves fan.
Oh, T-Wolf, 39?
No, 39. We need one though, because we suck.
Oh no, we suck again.
We're mid. We're mid. I'll
Yeah.
take mid. It's like
Mid-
we're mid, but it's still like our seventh greatest season ever. As soon as we've been so bad.
Well, I am super excited today because I get to have one of my longtime, lifelong friends on, Mike Brody. He's a comedian. We lived together in college. We went through some crazy times, and I'm just super excited. Like I've always been boys with Brody and always thought highly of him. Um, but I really started to respect him, because we've always thought different, and I appreciate someone that has a different perspective, but doesn't get like disrespectful in arguments. And Mike's always been that. But two main reasons I'm excited to talk to him today is he chased his dreams on a very difficult dream to be a professional comedian. I remember him talking about it, if not in college, very soon after college, he started chasing that. But when he ran into some problems with his drinking and alcohol, he got help, and he was very vocal and vulnerable and out in the open about it. And I don't think I've ever told you, Brody, but it really helped me to do the same. When you started getting vocal about it is when I needed help. And I remember seeing you back in Mason City, Iowa. So we grew up together in Mason City, Iowa, played basketball together. He stayed on and kept playing. He kept growing. I stopped growing. So was on a state championship basketball team and just a really good dude. But, we both drank a lot and partied a lot in both high school and college. And when he ran into trouble with it, he went and got help. And it was the same time, a little bit before, but around the same time that I was running into trouble with drugs, right? And I remember a conversation with you in May City that you had got sober. And it was right around the time that I needed to check myself because I was going off the guardrail. So just thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for just always being willing to listen, and sharing your perspective, even though our perspectives still vary a lot. But most importantly, thanks for being on today, and I'm excited to hear about your story a little bit.
Yeah, dude. And Brody, the reason we do this is just because like we don't do this. We're not trying to get famous on social media. We're doing this because this fills up our cup and just like we always tell our audiences, like if we can just change one life, and it's an example. Brody changed Chad's life. Like when Chad needed to listen to what Brody had to say, he was listening. So I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. And I mean, that's amazing to hear. I didn't know the specifics of that. So, I mean, that really means a lot to know that happened. So,
Yeah, man.
thank you.
So let's kind of get into it. So when did the alcohol abuse start? What led to it? And just talk a little bit about your journey to, hey, this is when I started drinking. This is how long I drank for. This was rock bottom. This is what I did with it. This is what I did to get out of it. So we always try and
Sure.
share like, hey, this is our rock bottom. Come up the roller coaster. This is where I'm at now. This is why I'm happy. This is how I got help. So just kind of talk through that journey a little bit.
Sure. Well, you and I had a mutual friend who got his own place when we were 16.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I
Like,
mean,
no adults. When you say own place, like no adults.
No
Nice.
adults, lived on his own.
Wow.
no adults. I mean, one unfortunate person that was on the other side of the duplex, but there was, felt so bad for that person. That person's life had to have been hell. It was parties every night, like just loud music, punk rock, like, and we weren't like me and this person, like we weren't like cool or anything, like, and then he got his own place, and it was like an '80s movie where suddenly he is like the homecoming king, literally, like it's just like in 6 months his stock went through the roof, and everybody he'd get off work and there'd be cars for like blocks waiting for him to come to his house because you're 16 and there's literally it's not like, oh, my dad doesn't care if we drink. There's nobody. So I was always kind of an awkward kid growing up, and like with comedians that's kind of common. Like they say people think we're class clowns, and there's some of that, but a lot of us are just awkward people who are the observers, maybe got bullied, that kind of thing. And so I just remember being at that person's house, and I'd had sips of alcohol before, but the first time I had 3 beers and I drank them real fast. And then I remember being like, "Oh, this is the answer. This is what I'm gonna do the rest of my life." And there may even been a little bit in my head that went like, "I think you might be an alcoholic." Like even immediately, but I just pushed it back and I was like, "I'm 16. I'll worry about that when I'm." I probably thought 30 was old, but you know what I mean? Like I was like, I'm gonna do this.
30 is old
So
when you're 16.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I just was like, it felt so good to me, and I actually thought that when I was sober, that was the phony me. Like me, drunk was the real me. And that other person's the imposter because they're awkward or they worry too much. I remember being, oh, I don't care what my parents think. I don't care what this person thinks.
Mm.
I didn't care if I was like people thought I was cool or not. I was like, I just wanted to drink, Um, and I did that, and I was not a destructive drunk. Like I know people who like they love to tear shit up, I tried my best to be like the cool guy who was like, "I love you, man," because I didn't want anybody to take it away from me. If I went to jail, there goes the answer. So I prided myself on being
Mm.
like I'm the guy that's always like, I'm the responsible one. Meanwhile, driving drunk like an asshole, you know what I mean? Like it was just stupid. Um so, we did that in high school, and then we went to college, and I went to the University of Northern Iowa for 2 years, and it was fine, but somebody questioned why I was drinking on a Wednesday, so I transferred because
No way.
Yeah. At that time, you wouldn't get questioned at the University of Iowa drinking on a Wednesday.
no, I remember being like these fucking pussies, and so I transferred to Iowa, and yeah, and then we all kind of like some of us had gone to community college, some of us were already there, but we
Yeah.
all kind of like met like '98. We all kind of came together then.
Yeah.
And then it was on, man. I mean, I went to school. I graduated on accident, I think. Like just like wasn't trying. I just wanted to go there and drink because that's like the most socially acceptable time to be wasted all the time as in college. And that was like my whole I waited my whole life to get to that point, and then I was just grasping on it to not stop because like, you know, after college I had this huge depression where I was like my life is over now because what am I gonna do? Same thing. But yeah, I drank a lot. I got a DUI. Um,
Remember that.
and I would bargain with myself where I would be like, "Oh, I only drink on Thursdays because Thursday was bar night." You know, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday. I'd be like, "I only drink on those days." But then I wouldn't. I would also drink on those. You know what I mean? I would be like, "I only drink on those days unless I actually am drinking on those other days." And then I would like on a Monday I would be like, I'm not drinking. And then I would lay in bed and wonder why I was suicidal on the day that I wasn't drinking. Like
Oh,
I'm just sitting
yeah.
there wanting to die. Um,
Because you weren't feeling
and
good, or because
but
mentally, like you weren't feeling good because you were going so hard, or like mentally you were just like, I'm suicidal because I'm not drinking.
I think it was a little bit of both. Like I think I didn't know how to act without it, but I also think there was some withdrawal, and all kinds of things. But I wasn't emotionally intelligent enough to pinpoint it.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
there's no worse shame or guilt than like the drinker's remorse and like the depression after a bender. I mean, it is the worst.
yeah, yeah. And the problem is like sometimes, we'd have that bender, and then, Sunday morning we'd go out for Bloody Marys, and it was like,
Yeah.
it was always, we're just gonna have one Bloody Mary, and then you know, a day and a half later, you know, um, but and then so a pretty pivotal moment in my life, which I'm not proud of, very very not proud of, but me and this guy, who's still a friend of mine to this day, but we got into a fist fight, and I fucked him up pretty bad,
Mhm.
because I had been in another fight where I stopped punching and the guy punched back, like I was kicking his ass, and then he punched back. So I go, okay, don't stop punching when you get into a fight. And then I got into a
Yeah.
fight with my friend, and I go, don't stop punching, and then I went too far, and
I couldn't get you to stop. I was like, I'm out of this, man.
I fucked him up pretty bad, and it
True
was
story.
a pretty rough point in my life, because then I was like kind of a pariah, because I had really, I didn't look good, and with good reason. I mean, I looked like a monster, and so um, and then I had to live with
Which
him
is
still.
not
So it
your
was
temperament or personality when you're sober at all, right? Like that's
no,
what shocked me
no,
about that moment because they always, I wasn't living with them at the time, but I was living in the same building, still super tight with them and partied with them and friends with them. And I remember it still vividly that night. The thing is like it took me so surprise, and one of our other really good friends who's a tough kid, you know. I'd been in my fair share of fights, and I know kind of when to step back. I was like, I'm not messing with him. He is not fucking around. He is here to take someone's head off, and I agree with him, so I'm not stopping him, right? So, and I remember it's just like it was a totally different person than who he was. It was like rage, and I was like, I didn't think Brody had it in him, but he did.
that built up anger and resentment that,
Yeah.
probably was directed at myself, but then I pushed it out at somebody else. I mean, it's
Mm.
complicated. Relationships are complicated, especially when you're 22, maybe I think I was.
And drinking all the
Um,
time.
yeah, yeah. So then I kind of like, it made me go. I still ended up staying friends with everybody, but I ended up kind of becoming independent in a way, because I kind of was like a little toady, like a little lackey to him, which is not, again, nothing that he did. I just wasn't really my own person, and so I got a job at a bar, a restaurant, Carlos O'Kelly's,
Mhm.
and I started, kind of made new friends. Still had my old friends, but like it was kind of like a trajectory, because then, well, addicts, I started taking pseudoephedrine every morning. Uh, because I was always hungover, and they sold them in the gas stations in Iowa City,
Yep.
so I'd get all hopped up on
Yeah.
legal coke, legal meth, basically.
We had this
And
great gas station Drago in Iowa called Come and Go, and it's spelled K-U-M
Yeah, I
and
got a
Go.
come and go sweatshirt.
Oh, you do? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's from where we live
Nice.
or
they
lived.
and they sold it. It's gonna change names now. I'm pissed. That's like my childhood. Come and go, man. We
Those
we got a
lighters
pumpkin
last
munch down the
forever.
street, but it's not the same.
Those lighters last forever. I still have one and it
Yeah.
still works.
So basically, I was kind of like getting all like methed up, or whatever you want to call it, and I started writing stuff. I just started writing all this stuff while I was bartending, and like people started to think it was funny. And then this guy came in, he was a regular, and he's like, I just did an open mic and I killed. And I remember being like, I'm the funny guy. I mean, and like, I'm funnier than him. So I just went and did, I cased out the joint in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I spent a month, just writing some jokes. And I went up and did it. And I brought people from the bar. They all laughed. And like, in retrospect, if I saw that set tonight or today, I would probably want to kill myself. Like, I'm sure it was the worst thing ever, but it felt good. And I remember being like, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. Like, instantaneously, I knew that was going to be the rest of my life. So I started doing that. But then I'm a comedian on the road. I'm in a bar every night, or an open mic. It doesn't just start all at once. And it's been about 5 years between starting off as an open micer and then going on the road, just getting wasted, and then it started to become more alone drinking. Like I would buy a bunch of beer, put it in the sink on the road, fill it up with ice or whatever, and just drink. Part of it was I was a cheapskate, I didn't want to waste all my money, but just people would start to be like kind of bummed by my drinking, you know, like they didn't want to do it the way I wanted to do it. Like they just normal people who just drink like normal people, you know, I don't know what that is, you know.
Right.
Um, and then I just
This
started,
wasn't a glass of red wine with a steak dinner. This was
Yeah,
done.
you were going to blackout, right? Like, were you blackout drunk, or were you?
I tried not to black out because like I said, I didn't want to like, but you know, we all do sometime, but I
Yeah.
could always hold my liquor. Like I could drink 18, 20 beers, have some, what was the gin, the Sapphire. I liked Sapphire. That's what I would drink. Uh, Towards the end, I would buy a 4 pack of Guinness for the taste because that's my favorite was my favorite beer, and then I would buy a case of Milwaukee's Best Light because at that point, who gives a shit? And spend $5 on 30 beers, you know, like back then.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. And honestly, I just started getting into meditation. Like some people started telling me about meditation, and I started meditating. And it's the weirdest thing because like this whole thing was my identity. And then one day I was like, I don't think I can do this meditation if I'm hungover. And it was really impulsive. My best friend's brother was in AA and I or in the 12-step program, and I just called him and I just said, "Hey, I think I want to try this," and that was it. It's kind of shocking to me, you know, like that it just went that fast because I am an impulsive person and I do get into things, but and I started doing it. And so for 2 years I started going to the program and it was great and I did all the steps and everything like that. And then I got cocky where I was like, I don't need to go to meetings anymore. I'm good. So I dry drunked it for about 5 years and it was miserable. Like it didn't immediately start miserable, but it you know it progressed where like my roommate was this girl that we were just friends. She would go for business, she would travel, and she had all these wine bottles in her cabinet and I would just like open it up and like pour it, see as close as I could pour it to my lips without drinking, and then pull back and just do that. And like I can't believe I stayed sober as long as I did. And then I met my wife, who's also sober. And
Did you meet her
true story. This sounds
in
big.
the program? Did you meet her in the program or outside of the program?
No, no, outside of the program.
Oh, nice.
And I think you know when we met on like Match.com. I think you know like both seeing we were sober was a selling point. You know, but I went to go get antibiotics at a place at a CVS, and they accidentally gave me Vicodin, which is nuts to think about now,
Whoa.
because you know they it's on lockdown now, but back then it was like everybody take pills, you know, like
Yeah.
this is about 2012, and I it sounds made up, but I didn't pay attention. I just took like a handful of Vicodin, thinking they were antibiotics, and then shit started to get awesome, and I didn't know why. Like I was like just having the best time of my life. And then I realized what it was. And then the thing is, I've been at bars. So I have not drank since 2005, but I've been sober since 2012. But there's been times when I was on the road where I had a Diet Coke and I grabbed the wrong one and it was somebody's rum and Coke. And I took a sip and like, you know, when you're sober, sometimes you go, oh, is there alcohol in that? And you wonder when you drink alcohol, you know, there's
Yeah.
no if, ands, or but. It went through
That's
my
right.
whole, it went down to my toes. And I called my sponsor and I go, hey, I just accidentally took a drink. And he goes, did you do it on purpose? And I go, no. And he goes, did you take another one? And I said, no. And he goes, well, you're fine. You know, it's a little jarring, but it's not your fault. If I would have done that with the Vicodin, it would have been fine. But I didn't. I kept taking it. Didn't tell my wife. When I was like, I have a prescription, even though it was like a 3-year-old expired prescription that they accidentally filled. And then I was buying it from people off the street. So that happened for about a month or two. My wife started to notice something was different, and I just kind of I didn't even think I here's the thing, I didn't think I was relapsing because I didn't drink. Like in retrospect, if I would have known I was relapsing, I would have drank, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I
You're just filling the addiction with a different substance.
right, I was like, it's different, it's fine. And then my wife goes, you feel weird, and you seem weird, and I go, well, I've been just taking some Vicodin, like I just said it like it was nothing, and she goes, what? And then yeah, she wasn't having it. My wife is a baller, and she's like, this is not my problem. You are going to get sober. You're going to take care of it. You're not putting it on me. And if you don't, we're done. Done.
Good for
Boom.
her.
And, you know, hard to argue with that. So I went back to the program and hit it hard. And the
Did you go
beauty
back
is
to AA or did you go back to, did you do NA?
I did AA, but I like to read NA literature. I think I enjoy NA literature as well. I
Yeah.
think that they have some good stuff that is all in the same spirit of AA, but maybe worded differently,
Right.
which I like. But I did go to AA, and when I was dry drunken, I had all these excuses. Like I was like, I don't like how they talk about like who the fuck puts milk and whiskey together? Like that's in the book.
Alcoholics do.
And I was like, speakeasies, what is this? Cab Calloway, like what the fuck is this? And when I came back, I was like, I'm not gonna worry about that stuff. I'm just gonna just take what I, look at what I like and, leave the rest. And it suddenly was no issue. I mean, who cares? It was written in the 30s. Of course they're going to talk about speakeasies, So suddenly it didn't matter. And shopped around for a sponsor, found them, and it's been good. And I've been sober ever since, And we all have our ups and downs. I have days where I'm like, I don't even think about, I've had a rough time in my life where I didn't even think about drinking, and you go, wow, that's amazing that, it didn't even occur to me to drink. And then
Right.
some days you get, cocky, and then you go, well, I better call my sponsor because I'm feeling a little edgy today. There's good days and bad days, but there's more good days than bad. And I'm a firm believer of, rock bottom is when you stop digging, you know, um,
Say that one more
and
time.
not to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Say what you said one more time. You believe rock bottom is when you've
Rock bottom is when you stop digging.
yeah.
That's
That's
really good.
it's I quit drinking when I was 27, but my buddy who had the apartment, and I love him, he's one of my lifelong best friends. He never stopped drinking,
Yeah.
and he's not doing well at all.
Yeah.
And that's he could have stopped digging when I did. And it's, you look at it and they say it's a selfish program, and what they mean is, he's my friend, I care the world about him, but I also look at him and go, that could have been me,
That's right.
Could have been any
start
of
at the
us,
same
man.
time.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said
Yeah, any of us.
it could have been any of us. So that's crazy. So you like did you when you started meditating, did you start thinking like, oh, I got a problem here, like I can't stop drinking, or like where did that thought come in for you to even make a phone call to a friend that you even knew was in AA? Like where did that thought come from?
It had been there for a while, and I finally, maybe it was the meditation that did it. I, kind of had a moment of clarity, because I kind of knew it was in there, but I was always kicking that ball up the hill,
Yeah.
like later, 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 and then
Yeah.
I realized that that hill goes forever.
Yeah.
It goes forever. Because I mean, I, I think the time it really hit in that I was an alcoholic was I was dating this girl, and I liked drinking so much that I preferred not to have a girlfriend because they would make you not drink. They would be like, it was like a distraction for my drinking. Like that's literally how much it was. And I dated this girl for a little bit, and she showed so much affection to me. It was like rubbing my back, and it freaked me out. It freaked me out, and I ran home. I drove home an hour and a half. I was had not had a drink. Drove home an hour and a half, and I remember being like, I'm gonna drink beers one after another, literally until I don't feel this anymore. And I remember it was 8. I counted it. I drank 8, and then I remember being like, that's not good. like,
That's not
I was
good.
like, I literally drank until I couldn't feel it anymore, and then I was like, this is not good. So that was in the back of my head, but I mean, I think, yeah, I just realized that I had hit a wall and that I was never getting past that wall. And I mean, and I
What
hadn't had a
it
drink since I was 27.
what advice do you have for someone that's watching this, um, that's thinking they need help and thinking they need to go into a program? What should be their first steps? Like, what if they don't have a friend with a brother that was in the program? Like, what advice would you give somebody that wants to stop digging, as you put it?
I mean, the way I did it was I went to AA. So, I mean, and there are other ways to do it, but that's my experience of what I know. And I mean, there's lots of online meetings and there's lots of in-person meetings. And what I would do is go in and shop around because, there's just as many different kinds of meetings as there are people in the world.
Mm.
And there's liberal meetings, there's conservative meetings. The one that I went to was a LGBT, was a gay meeting, and it was across the street from me, and I'm straight, but I just went in there and I go, "Oh, is it okay?" They're like, "Yeah, just get in here." So,
Right.
it was, so I went to a gay meeting for, several years, and all the sponsors are like, everybody there has 50 years of sobriety, and they're all like architects. It's amazing. So, um, but the thing is, I've heard of people going like, well, I went and I didn't like the tone of this. And I'm like, well, you could just go to a different one in a different part of town or whatever, and you'll find people that you relate to. And then just ask them. I mean, you kind of do have to put yourself out there a little bit, and maybe go just, you can just watch for a few times, but after a while, find somebody that looks like they have what you want, and go up and ask them if they can sponsor you, and if they don't, find somebody else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I, I,
that's
I
I
crazy.
love
did.
that.
I shopped around. I went through like five sponsors before I had my original one, and then like some stuff happened where like he moved and stuff like that, and then I went through and I was like I liked them as people, but it did not click, so I just kept going, and now I've had this one for years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you said that because that's how it's so uncomfortable going your first time. I vividly remember first time I went and I was like, it was good because there were people in there that were way worse off than I was. And I'm like, it just made me think like, hey, I don't want to get to that point, right? I need the help now, and I'm blessed and lucky that I'm here because, as you put, if I keep digging this hole, I'm gonna be where they're at, and I don't want to get that far, right? And some of them talk to me about it, like, bro, you don't seem, you seem like you're doing well, and you do not want to dig this hole. You do not want to go. A couple of them were, homeless. A couple of them were just lost their families, lost their wife because of their addictions, and I wasn't to that point. I was to a bad enough point that I attempted to take my life, but it wasn't to a point that um, I guess that's about as bad as it can get. But it wasn't like a daily thing, and I was still productive at work and still was able to have relationships, right? So I jumped in
Sometimes you're
pretty
worse
quick.
off. Sometimes you're worse off for that you can, in a sense, you can mask and you can live your life, and it doesn't seem as urgent. The immediacy isn't as big because you still have your job, you're doing that.
And
But meanwhile, you're dying inside.
that's right.
Sometimes the people laying in the gutter are lucky because they can go, this cannot go on, you
Yeah.
know? And at that meeting I went to with all the gay architects, they were all so put together where I was like, this is like the pinnacle of what you can do. And then I would go to a meeting downtown where, like you said, people are literally crawling off the streets. And you go, and it's not a judgment of anyone, but
No.
you go, this is where I could be, this is where I could be, both
Yeah.
sides,
Yeah.
and they're both as valid and they're both as meaningful, you
So
know.
12, 13 years later, 13 years sober now.
And well, it's 12 now because one day at a time. But
Yeah.
yeah, in
Yeah.
March it'll be 13.
March is 13.
Um,
Got it. So do
yeah.
you still go to meetings and do you still talk to your sponsor?
I do, and the problem is I travel a lot for, being a comedian. So, you know, there's a lot of online meetings now, and I'll go to Zoom meetings, still talk to him, obviously, and yeah, I keep up because I know if I don't, I'm gonna let my hand off the wheel, and it's gonna be, and I was doing, I was working on a cruise, and it was an Alaskan cruise, and I was walking around Juneau. I don't know if you've ever been to Juneau, but like during the day, it's very touristy, obviously. But I was there because some boring minutia. I was going to switch ships, so they put me in a hotel. So I was there and I saw all the tourists, and then the ships left, and all the crazy like people that Johnny Cash wrote songs about came out, and it was wild. And I was walking past a bar, and it looked like I was like, oh man, this looks like this would have been a good time. And I walked in and I turned back around and I went and talked to my sponsor because like that's all it takes, man. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to be in a Johnny Cash song, but you can't. I'm I'm doing good, and that's the thing. Like people look at me like in my community and they go, Mike's got like a ton of sobriety, but like you can't get cocky about it because it's
Yeah.
always they call it the tiger crouching in the doorway. It's
Yeah.
always ready.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, that's
Um,
awesome that you made the choice to go call your sponsor, right? Or you have enough tools in your toolbox to be able to like roll the tape through, right? Because I've been in the same situation because really quick it could have flipped on you, and next thing you know, you're shit facing Juno.
so what I talked about with Brody with my cocaine abuse is like I was a highly functioning addict, and I would argue that I was better at my job and worked harder with the stimulus and substance um, than I do now, right? So what? How did the alcohol affect your comedy? Like, did it help? Did it hurt? When you were going through kind of initially getting started and you were still drinking and on the road a lot, and as you put it, putting beers in sync with ice around it, how did that affect your performance and just your life on the road?
Well, I did a lot of bargaining in the first where I was like, I don't drink before a show. I was very proud of that. I was like, I do not drink before a show because I'm a professional. But then I would start doing shows where there's 2 to 3 shows a night. And I was like, well, technically, I'm not drinking before the show because there's already been one. And then next thing you know, you are. I would get lit up after the show, but I did try to stay like because I didn't want it to mess me up. But yeah, there was. I mean, people think people that want to try doing comedy always come up to me and they're like, I want to do stand up, but I gotta drink like a half a bottle of wild turkey because then I'm funny. And I'm like, you're not. Like you think you are, but you're not as funny after a half a bottle.
Yeah,
You just your perception is all off, or your friends might be laughing at you, but like there is a line where you can have a few beers, but I've never been one to know where that line is.
yeah,
Um, so when I quit drinking, the problem was almost all of my jokes were about drinking. So I had to like start over. And there was a good 6 months where I was like, I am a shit comedian. Like I didn't know what I had like I started from scratch. I
yeah.
was
What am I going to
frustrated, it
talk
wasn't
about?
going well. Huh?
Yeah, it's like, what am I going to talk about?
I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know I was 27 and I realized I had no idea who I was outside of drinking. Not a single clue. So that process took a while and you know, I got through it, but yeah, like I had to write a whole new set. And I remember somebody going like, "You were a lot more fun when you were drinking," but I lost a lot of drinking buddies, but then you realize there's a difference between a drinking buddy and a buddy.
And
You
I
know, a
put them.
couple of them, some of them sometimes, were both, but yeah, and then but now because I was always so afraid because people will send you shots, especially if you're doing a bar gig. People
Oh, I
love
can
in the
imagine.
small town bar gigs. They're like, "Hey, give him the shot." And I used to be the guy who'd be like, "Come on, pussies, give me more." Like drop it in the thing and drink it. And I was so afraid that people would send me up a shot. Not even because I was afraid I was going to drink it, but because I was afraid they were going to judge me. And when it would happen, I would be like, yeah," I'd have all these excuses, and then it would get weird. And then just one day, I was like, they sent me up a shot, and I go, "Oh, I don't drink. Just give it to him. Thank you, though." And
Yeah,
they're like, "Oh, okay." And then from that point on, it never fucking mattered. It was like I just slayed the dragon, and I didn't even think
Yeah.
about it. And now, like, I go to shows, I'm always around alcohol, always. And like, it never, I never think about it that way. Like, you get used to it because people go, the first year is tough.
yeah.
People always talk about that, and it's true. You have to like kind of like rewire your brain. But after a while, I mean, it's just business as usual.
I think
But
that's so
yeah, it was
important.
definitely a relearning.
You can tell, you can re-identify yourself, and I had to do it. I know Drago had to do it. And if you're struggling and you're trying to get sober, you're trying to quit drugs, or you're trying to stop watching porn, or you're whatever your addiction is, right? Um, you have to re-identify yourself to yourself, but you have to verbalize it and say it out loud and start to believe it. So when Mike said, "Oh, I don't drink," he changed his identity, right? It's and I've been able to do that. It's like, oh, I don't even hang around people that do that anymore because I can't be tempted, and I don't do that, right? A good friend of ours, I won't name his name, but we were going to go to a concert. He ended up not making it, but we were going to a concert and I called him to come and he's like, "Hey, Lubin, I got to tell you," he's like, "I can't, I don't know if I should come because I can't do cocaine anymore." I was like, "Bro, I haven't done coke for like 14 years, so you're safe. You can tell your wife I don't do that anymore, right?" But it's just super funny how he identified me as that person. I was like, "Yeah, that was like 14 years ago. I've been clean close to 14 years now." So it just cracks me up. But the truth was I constantly have to re-identify myself to myself and to other people, right? And I think that's so important. What Mike just said is you have to say it out loud. You have to say, "I'm not a drinker," right? And you have to be able to tell people that. Because if you are an addict, like all three of us are, and you leave, Mike put it as getting cocky. I say you give yourself leeway, right? I believe in really tight guardrails, super tight guardrails, right? And a guardrail is, hey, I don't drink, right? It's not even up for interpretation, right? No, I don't want a glass of wine with my dinner. Hey, I'm at a restaurant, don't put a wine glass down because I don't drink, right? And you have to say it over and over and show people. And everyone thinks it's going to be like this big detriment on your friend circle. And it's good, as Mike said, um, they might be your drinking buddies, but they're not your friends if they won't accept you that you don't drink anymore. And you might have to reestablish your group. But he's right that drinking's so socially accepted, but the truth is if you identify yourself as a non-drinker, that's also very socially accepted, right? It's not the early 2000s anymore and oh, you pussy, have a drink anymore. I just find it so much more accepting that when you identify yourself as a non-drinker.
Yeah,
I do think that's true. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the same thing runs true for like us, like, when we connected and you're like, I really don't talk about my sobriety. And I was like, hey man, I really didn't talk about my sobriety either. And then somebody much wiser than me said, maybe you should talk about your sobriety because maybe you help somebody. So I had the same problem. I just was fear of judgment on what people would think of me, right? So I'm with you. That's a huge achievement to like start telling it. Do you tell it? You're like, I'm sober. Like everybody's like, oh, what's up? Okay.
Yeah. Uh, because yeah, it makes you realize that like, sometimes you sell people short because you go, oh, they're gonna judge me, they're gonna be mad. Now if I talk about it on stage, people will come up and either they'll be like, oh, I'm sober too, that's so cool you talked about it, or they'll just say they'll have beers and they'll be like, congratulations, and they mean it,
Yeah.
and maybe they're just a heavy. I don't. It's not my problem what their thing is, but it still is kind of nice. And I try to tell people that like, you know in movies whenever you see like an AA meeting, it's always in like the basement and there's like pipes dripping on somebody and everybody's crying and like that there is an element of that, but it's not always like that. And I try to tell people that like we laugh a lot in meetings. Like you'll never meet people with a darker, sicker sense of humor than
Oh yeah.
people in like a 12-step program. They'll laugh at it. Somebody be like, I sold my mom into slavery for a shot of whiskey, and then like everybody will laugh. And it's not because they're assholes, but they're like, oh shit, me too. Like they relate. And so I do all different stuff for comedy, but I was doing a cruise and they have 12-step meetings on the cruise. And when I say 12-step, I mean it says Friends of Bill, but I mean there's people from OA in there, there's NA people. It's basically, Al-Anon, whoever can just, there's one slot, so they all make it work together and it's totally fine. But this is a true story. So sometimes there's 2 people in there, sometimes there's 25. We were in this meeting, I think there's like 10 of us, and a guy walks in holding like 2 really big like alcoholic drinks. And he sits down and we were just kind of like, all right, some people are further along in denial than other people. And we just kept going. So we're reading the preamble and we're doing all this stuff. And this is true. He's sitting there and you can see his face and he just goes like you can see him getting confused, and then he goes, wait, he goes, what meeting is this? And we go, this is a 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous. And he goes, oh, I thought this was the swingers meeting. And he ran out and he had like pineapple drink. So if you know anything about that, it made sense. And
he was putting out the vibe, huh?
and I think we laughed the rest of the meeting was actually shit. We laughed the entire time. We could not stop laughing, but it was kind of good in that way. But yeah, that's the spirit, you know? That's what I think.
That's amazing. Well, man, I just once again thank you for coming on. Thank you for being so vulnerable and honest. Thank you for being a champion of the 12-step program. I just really enjoy following you and following your career. I'm super proud of you, man, that you went after it and have made a career out of something you love. Just any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with, or anything else you want to say?
Well, thanks, and right back at you, both of you. And like, it is like, it's kind of fun, man. Like, people talk about it is hard to get sober, and it is a journey, but like, look at us now, man. I mean, like, think back to, we go back a long way. Jeff, I just met you, but we're all connecting. But like, you, Lubin, and me, we saw some dark shit back in the day, and like, who would have guessed? I mean, also we wouldn't know what Zoom is. We're not, psychic, but like, here we are, like, doing well, trying to spread, like, not in a corny way, but trying to spread our hope, our experience, strength, and hope to people. And we have a platform for it. And I'm hoping that people resonate with it. But like, it's just, life is good, man. Like, it's it's amazing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I never, this is not how I saw my future. I don't know what my future was, but I didn't see this.
Yeah. Well, I just love that you hit that dark place and you realized it and you did something about it. And just the joy you bring people through your comedy, the light and hope you bring through some of your posts. I really enjoy following you. What is the best place for people to get at you that might want to see your comedy or book you?
The best way to do it would be mikebrody.com. It's MikeBrody.com. So it's got a bunch of my videos, like my dry bar specials up there, some clips. It's got my schedule. It's got links to my podcast. I have a podcast with one of my friends, my good friend Jessie Campbell. She is another comedian. She's super funny, and
Hilarious.
thanks, man. It's a podcast about nothing and everything. Like, we don't have a theme. It's not one of those like, yeah, we it's a podcast about Egyptian needles. You know how like specific things get, like, but we're more like, we're comedians and we just bring our life in and we razz each other and we have a good time, and it's a ton of fun. So
Wait,
you
did,
can you
did
can
you say
listen to it on
Egyptian
there.
eye goggles?
What's that?
Did you say Egyptian eye goggles? It's a podcast
I
about
said
Egyptian eye goggles?
I said Egyptian needles, but like
Okay.
sewing needles, but eye goggles would be even better. I'd listen to that one. But yeah, MikeBrody.com for all this stuff there.
Good.
See, you
And
can see pictures of my dogs. I put a button for my dogs.
Oh,
I
yeah.
So
love it. I love it. Well, we'll put his Instagram handle on. Go ahead and take us out, Drago.
Yeah, hey Brody, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure to meet you, bro. I love your story that like you just like were like, I'm gonna fucking figure this out. And then you just went and did it. That's like that's very rare, right? Like some of the stories that come on are horrible, but I'm just super pumped that you made the conscious decision, you went and did the work, and you got a fucking awesome life. That's what you could have. And we tell our listeners all the time, we don't do this because we're trying to get famous. We do this because we fill up our cup. So if you're thinking about wanting to get sober, I honestly would much rather take a phone call from you at 3 o'clock in the morning than have to go to your funeral. We're available. Me and Chad put our personal mobiles in the chat bot. If you need someone to talk to, you need a high five, you want a hug, we got you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Mike would be there too. So I don't always have the answers. I don't always know what to say, but I have the resources and I do know the people that know what to say. So there's nothing too crazy that you could throw out at me. I was telling my team today, from being a coach, I also coach a lot of successful people in my industry of real estate. And I've dealt with suicide, I've dealt with kidnapping, I've dealt with bankruptcies and addictions and suicide. Like, there's nothing I haven't dealt with. And I don't always have the answers, like I said, but we have the resources and know the people who do, and we'll get you with the right person and the right program. Just because I know Brody's heart, I know he'd be willing to talk to you. So just know we're here. The three of us are proof that you can overcome your rock bottom. You can work hard, take it day by day, and turn what might not be a great life right now into one. And we're here to help you with that. Brody, you're amazing. I appreciate you, brother. It's so good to see you.
Thanks, you too. Thanks,
All right,
Chad. Thanks,
Drago.
Jeff.
Later,
Thanks,
guys. Love you
guys.
guys. Thank you for the time.